Hello everybody, I'm Rob Drinkwater of Techno Garage Services. Welcome to our channel. I hope you're all doing well in these strange times we're currently living in and have managed to stay safe. Today I'm going to talk to you about something non-technical but equally as important to us all. Sadly, we've lost a lot of people here in the UK and worldwide, of course, due to the COVID-19 or coronavirus pandemic. Obviously our hearts go out to all those people who have lost loved ones. There's no doubting that we will lose more people over the coming weeks and months as well. So that means we all have to try and stay as safe as possible. However, this lockdown ultimately isn't the long-term answer for two reasons. Firstly, we all need to get back to some semblance of normality, whatever the new normality happens to be. And secondly, the nation simply can't afford for this to go on much longer. Now that second point may sound a bit mercenary, but I'm afraid that the country can't afford to have everybody sitting at home and the government paying for it. We need to understand that at the end of the day, the government has no money. It's our money that we pay in taxes, all the different taxes that we pay. We've already spent billions propping up the economy to this point. That will continue for a while, of course, but there comes a point at which this is totally unsustainable, a point at which has to be pared back or stopped. Indeed, the Chancellor has already hinted that we might drop the furlough payments back to only being 60% soon. So what does this mean? Well, we still haven't got a cure or a vaccine for this virus. So if we are to go back to some sort of normal life soon, we'll end up having a second wave that will be worse than the first wave, and nobody wants that. Just read the history books about the Spanish flu in the early years of the 20th century. But we do need to start moving forward again. This means that we will need to move into a very different world of work for the future. So before we start talking about returning to work and the implications of that, let's talk about where we are now. So, many people have all been working in this crisis. The key workers in the NHS, of course, but the shop workers, the delivery drivers, the postmen and women, the community carers, loads and loads of people have still been going around their normal work in very exceptional circumstances. And we take our hats off to those people. But many of us have had no work. Either our business has had to close under the rules from the government, or we chose to close the business on that same advice. Maybe those decisions were made for our own health, the health of our workers, or the health of our family. Whatever the reason, many of us have been at home for 6 weeks or more now. Now that puts many people into an environment they're basically not used to. They're used to getting up in the morning, going to work, doing their job. Even if they're the boss, they go home 9 or 10 hours later and have an evening at home. To have 6 7-day weekends in a row can have a devastating effect on people's health and well-being. Some of the support forums that I've been involved with during this crisis have seen a lot of people talking about their mental health at this time. Quite apart from some suffering boredom that has led to a massive eating problem combined with a lack of exercise, ending up with them having significant weight gain, many have had financial worries. How are they going to make ends meet? How are they going to pay the mortgage or rent, as well as the other bills? It all adds to the worry and mental anguish, quite apart from the worry of contracting the virus as well. We've seen the figures of the COVID-19 deaths each day along the way, but I wonder if there's been a significant increase in people taking their own life in this period. I really wouldn't be surprised, sadly. Normally the highest risk group for suicide is middle-aged men, just the sort of people who run their own businesses normally. This could lead to a significant rise in that sector during this crisis. We haven't seen figures for this as yet. So both mental health and physical health is vital. Some people I know seem to have ended up with each day just merging into one another. They're getting up late, going to bed late, and have lost self-motivation. Now I'm no life coach, far from it. Indeed, I was really full of doom and gloom at the beginning of this crisis. I really wondered how I was going to get through it. I'm usually away from home most of the week, teaching or working, and only home weekends or maybe an evening or two in the week. So to be at home full time was actually a culture shock. I worried about how I was going to pay the bills, keep my head above water. I'm self-employed. No one was going to pay me whilst I wasn't working. The self-employed weren't going to get furlough payments. How was it all going to end? We have a little bit saved, but that wasn't going to last long with no income. I was able to get some of our bills reduced a little by speaking to people like our insurance company, etc., which all helped a bit. Hopefully we should see a little bit via the government in June. But the key thing my wife and I did was to stay busy and to go on regular walks. She runs her own business, making hand-sewn gifts for special occasions. While she has still had orders come in during this period, this hasn't kept her fully busy. However, she has now turned her hand to making face masks, as this now looks like the way we will have to live our lives for the foreseeable future. I, on the other hand, had no real work, so I set about doing some of the DIY tasks that I've neglected recently. That took up the first 2 or 3 weeks. I got some serious stuff done, from jet washing all the drives and patios to fitting an outside tap for gardening, amongst other things. Then I decided to move on to something completely out of my comfort zone. I started making these training videos. I'm used to face-to-face training really, so to make videos was something I'm quite new to, but I've enjoyed it. Plus, as I say, my wife and I have been on lots of walks. We're lucky enough to live in the countryside, so it's very pleasant. I do appreciate that if you're living in a flat in a built-up area and you have young kids maybe, going for a walk may not be easy, but do try to do it daily. It's a great way of clearing one's mind and also great exercise, and you can still social distance even if there's other people around. If necessary, wear a face mask or even a scarf across your nose and mouth to help protect yourself and others. So bearing in mind a huge swathe of the population has been at home for much of the past 6 or 7 weeks, we will inevitably have a point in the near future when a massive amount of us will have to return to work. So whether you're an employer or an employee, I have a few points for you to consider. First and foremost, are you well? Have you got any of the symptoms of COVID-19? If you have a shortness of breath, have a new and persistent cough, or a high temperature, do not go back to work. Indeed, do not leave the house. Speak to NHS 111 and see what they say. They're now testing into the public domain, so you may be able to get a test, but only if you speak to them. They won't come and find you. Just remember, you may recover, but others may not that you pass it to. Also, if anyone in your household has these symptoms, you should be quarantining for a fortnight at least. Secondly, is your business ready for your return? What precautions have you or your employer put in place? Have you got appropriate PPE? Have you put in place distancing regulations to prevent employees or customers getting too close to each other? Have you put in place payment systems that can avoid face-to-face or close contact? Have you fitted perspex shields in place to separate staff and customers? More especially, have you trained your staff or been trained yourself on the correct use of PPE? For example, correct fitting of face masks. Have you considered the use of gloves? If you move from place to place, you're just moving the virus on your gloves. Exactly the same as having it on your hands. So new gloves in each location you work. It's not about having the correct protection, it's about using it correctly. You need to make sure you dispose of your PPE in the correct way. Don't just throw it on the floor or in a normal bin. Have you got sufficient hand sanitizer available? Where is it located? How should I use it? In fact, it's thought regular hand sanitizer use and regular hand washing may be more effective than using gloves. But as a further consideration, the Health and Safety at Work Act is in force here. So you, especially as an employer, need to make sure that you can still do your job, whatever it is, safely, whilst wearing PPE and also observing social distancing and other precautions. And if you're an employer, you need to consider the additional burden of duty of care. As a business owner, you have a duty of care to your staff and your customers. So you need to make sure that you are taking all reasonable steps to ensure the safety of your staff and your customers. That includes all the things I've already talked about, and also making sure that you're educating your staff and customers as to your new policies and working practices. Laminated signs in and around your business may be the key here. Good clear signage as to what you want them to do. Many of your customers could be long-standing customers who are used to your normal ways of working. Walking into the reception, shaking hands, close-up contact, paying by cash, etc., etc. We need to make sure they are fully conversant with the new way of working. Don't just expect them to get it, make sure they know. If you're providing a product to them, or handing their car back to them maybe, or any other passing of goods between you and them, make sure you have effective disinfection regimes both when you receive the item and when you give it back. We have to appreciate that this is a virile virus. It is particularly dangerous to several sections of the populace, and despite our best efforts, people will still get infected. Sadly, some will still die. But we have to do our best to kill it and avoid its transfer. By putting into place the best possible procedures, we can help all of this. I've seen some documents from the health and safety people, and they seem to suggest that as long as you are taking all reasonable steps to prevent contamination, then prosecutions would be unlikely. So that is a bit of a relief to business owners. But let's not be complacent about this. Finally, let's return to mental health. I think that all employers need to cut their staff a little bit of slack here. And in fact, all members of staff need to cut their employers some slack as well. Many of these guys and girls will have had a 6-week break. Hardly a holiday, but they haven't been at work in that time. Many will have slotted into a kind of student lifestyle, and that isn't going to be easy for them to break straight away. So they may be a little bewildered and find working again a bit of a bind. Try not to be too heavy on them. Whilst they may not have had some of the worries a business owner has had in this time about keeping the business alive, they've probably found it pretty tough themselves. Indeed, many employees are probably quite anxious about returning to work for many reasons, not least of which the risk of contracting the virus. If we make proper plans and put them into action prior to reopening, we can make this a safe and worry-free environment for all concerned. So all work together to get back into this. That's it from me. I hope you found this a useful little video. Let's hope that we can all get through this okay. I envisage that we're going to see a little bit more of a lockdown for a bit longer yet, and then a phased unlocking over a period of time, including some return to work in that time. And for many months to come, extra precautions having to be put in place, whether at work or out in the street or even at home, to make sure that we get through this, until hopefully they find a vaccine or a cure for it. We've all just got to pull together and make sure this all works for us. Stay safe, stay apart, and stay healthy. Good luck to everyone going back to work, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Thanks for watching.